All right, now we want to mute the mic. All right, it seems like everything is all good. Everything's a go. And that's what I like. I like that. So I'm going to actually call this show International in Gaming, International in Gaming International Gaming Show. Yeah. I'm going to say this because I want to kind of dabble into a couple of different things other than gaming. So I'm going to wait for any type of um, I'm gonna wait till this fills up before we even begin. Um, so what I'm going to do now actually is to test this to see if it'll work. I'm supposed to be connected to my Bluetooth, and I don't hear it. Um, uh, I don't know. I don't know. So we're gonna work on that. I got to delete some stuff on my hard drive too. That's a no go right now. One of these games got to go. So let me see here. I'm gonna go to media. I'm gonna go to YouTube's. And yeah, I gotta do this again. I gotta start this all over again. So let me see here. Can I use the microphone? There we go. Yeah, I gotta do this again. I gotta start this. All right. So it looks like everything's a go. Seems like everything is legit, and we can basically start, which is great. Um, so I'm gonna call this the International and Gaming Show because I want to cover a little bit of international news here for the people that are in America, which is where I reside in. Um, Not going to spend too much time into anything political. This is just what popped up on my news feed. I didn't know that supposedly uh, Mr. Mr. Trump Towers here is actually he won the majority of the CPAC in 2024, and Ron DeSantis. Um, this dude is a governor, I believe, in Florida. He's in distant second. So crazy stuff, man, crazy stuff. I'm like, what the hell? Um, I don't care either way you look at it. So that's how I look at it. Um, then other things too. Who the hell is okay? So I mean, one of the things I'm looking at here because right now what I'm doing, if you don't know, is I'm just waiting for uh, potentially the room to fill up here. Noticing, and maybe you guys notice this as well. Um, Man, like this world is falling off the bone here. Like there's so many like attacks like this there, like this girl in Italy, and they said that she pricked three of her kids to term for what? Like what? What is? I hate to bring this up, man, but I want everybody to kind of understand the kind of world that we're dealing with right now. Like, why? Why? Then there's a Florida woman that says Sugar Daddy Mama Appreciation Month. Like, what? I don't know, man. I don't know. But before I head too deep into it, and these train derailments, I don't know what the hell's going on. Whatever. Well, I don't want to go too deep into this, so we better uh, migrate over. But that's the news that I'm seeing right now. It's like what? This is what look. I have these like particular feeds on my phone. You have the Alex Murdoch Murdo. Oh boy, I don't know. Then the Ohio woman, she also terms three families before she did it to herself. Like, what is happening? I don't get it. I don't like. I wish I missed the days that we seen positive stuff in the news. But regardless, we're going to try to positive this thing up here. I just figured I'll let you guys know what's really going on because I know us gamers are in our own little bubble. Today's show is specifically going to start calling out uh, expectations versus reality, essentially. Expectations versus reputations. And what I'm noticing is that there's a reputation of things and there is expectations of these things, of these games, by the way. And to be honest with you, this show is probably going to be more along the lines of being like, we'll talk about overrated games. I'm not going to lie to you. So I've actually went all the way back to the PlayStation 1 because I'm a PlayStation fanboy, right? So I'm a hardcore fanboy of PlayStation. And I'm noticing this, right? Here, like the top 10, what's going on, Jerk? What's going on, Jerk Chicken? What I'm noticing here, and what I would like to do is start from, all the way back in 94, 95 to the PS5, which is today, almost 30 years ago, and just talk about each game that was kind of like big and if the expectations were up to snuff. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like the reputation is kind of skewed the expectations to be, in my opinion, right? So, for instance, going back to PlayStation 1 days and N64, which I'll talk about, for what I can see, the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games that I can see here. I don't know if this is in any kind of particular order, but I do see. Why is there another alarm? Oh, no, it's nothing. Okay. I do see that Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VII, Tekken 3, Castlevania. I feel like it's a cult classic. Gran Turismo 2 was huge back then. Ape Odyssey was another like sleeper hit. Silent Hill, Vagrant Story. I've always wanted to play that game. Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver. I did play that game. I haven't beaten it to this day. That game is obscure to me. Like mentally, my brain can't wrap around that. Final Fantasy Tactics, Crash Bandicoot Warped, and then Tony Hawk Pro Skater. These are prolific games that people just kind of talk about. And to be honest with you, where the hell is Tomb Raider? Where is that at? Tomb Raider ain't nothing at all. Like, really? So I swore it's so better than the Silent Hill. And where's Resident Evil? What is this? That's what I mean. Like, I feel like people's expectations for games and their the reputation for these games are kind of like skewed. Back in on the N64 as well, you have like Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Mario Kart. That's always a classic because that's an original. I don't think anything was like that beforehand. GoldenEye, Banjo-Kazooie, Wave Race, Perfect Dark, Smash Brothers, another original game. I don't know what Blast Corps is. Star Fox 64, Diddy Kong Racing, which is like a clone of Mario 64, F-Zero, and Paper Mario. So I'm gonna go to PlayStation 1. And here's my claim to fame, right? I mean, here's my claim that I'm making here, which kind of pisses me off when I see this shit, right? I see this often where I mean, who am I to tell you let's go on the PlayStation what's good and what's not, right? I distinctly remember back in the PlayStation 1 day, right? That Metal Gear Solid was one of the most talked about games there is. And are people's expectations in line with I should really call this show something else, to be honest with you, and I think I will. But I would say expectations, no, excuse me, reputations versus reality is what I really should call this. But y'all change the name soon. As a matter of fact, let me change the name now. And I want to talk about Metal Gear Solid because I feel like Metal Gear Solid was one of those games where some people understood this game and then some people didn't. And is it a good game? You want to know something though? You want to really know something? I've never actually beaten. I've never actually beaten Metal Gear Solid. Never actually beaten Metal Gear Solid, which is the crazy thing. You know what I mean? Let me see it. Reputation versus reality. There we go. Done. And I do remember this. I was a big fan of Tomb Raider, right? I was a huge fan of Tomb Raider. And I was kind of pissed off at, Tomb Raider 3 didn't get its love too. So I think its reputation doesn't align with the reality of what was going on, because I feel like Tomb Raider was one of those games that did big numbers and it did big things in general. And for some reason, I think it grew too big too fast, which was probably one of the reasons why people feel that way. Maybe. Not exactly sure. But anyway, going back to Metal Gear Solid, the things that it did in Metal Gear Solid, huge shit. We're talking about cinematic, full-on storyline that you probably wouldn't have gotten anywhere else but, I don't know, like an RPG. Like, they really went full-on out with the technology that they had. Another thing is they actually had motion blur in the PS1 game. That is a very hard effect to do. And even though the gameplay was very simple, I mean, it's a simple concept, right? Essentially, you hide. You see like where the enemies are looking, you just hide. And that's great. I feel like games nowadays are way too complex for its own good, which is a terrible shame, but that's where we stand right now. So not only did you carry like this high caliber storyline, which they get really good, the storyline takes it totally up a notch on the PS2. That Metal Gear Solid, they took that shit overdrive. Like, it was absolutely insane what they managed to do with Metal Gear Solid 2. But I think that, I would say that the reputation precedes that game for sure. It deserved every crumb of what it got. Every crumb. Every single crumb. So I can't take it away. Now, looking at the other games, I'm not going to go through all the lists, so don't get it fucked up. Final Fantasy VII was another game that essentially was the old Final Fantasy games on the Super NES, but brought into 3D. I don't feel personally, right? I don't feel personally that, I don't know why that game caught on. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't see why Final Fantasy VII really caught on. I don't see why it caught on. I don't see why it caught on. Because it wasn't like 3D, you know what I'm saying? It was essentially still 2D because you couldn't move the camera around either, right? So that was a situation as well. But for some reason, I mean, I guess people like the battle system, right? And it brought that there. But I think it was pretty similar to a lot of the other RPGs. So to me, its reputation doesn't match what it really is. So I'm going to have to give that shit a thumbs down. Another big game for the PS1 era, right, was Tekken 3. And Tekken 3, I mean, I know a lot of people out there love them some Street Fighter. They love that shit to death. And I get it. right? It was the first fighting game, essentially. That was what it was, though. But what I hate about the Street Fighter community is that they never give Tekken its credit. I feel like Tekken did what fighting games, or for fighting games, what PlayStation did with, and this is. Ooh, I know somebody gonna be mad somewhere, shape, or form. I think that Tekken 3 did what PlayStation did with consoles for fighting. I mean, yeah, people like their Street Fighter 2, and that was pretty cool, but I feel like the whole 2D fighting, Mortal Kombat did its thing, but to put it in 3D fighting and add all of those dynamics, absolutely. They had bowling, they had all sorts of little mini games. Like, Namco was on their ish when it came to that game. So I feel like the reputation and the reality aligns perfectly fine with that one. Absolutely. I feel like they freaking nailed that shit. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to talk about Castlevania. I feel like the reputation is actually equal to its reality. It's pretty obscure, so I'm not going to go into there. Or Abe Odyssey. But I will talk about Gran Turismo, which Gran Turismo was one of the first simulators ever made. And one thing that people really undermine Gran Turismo, even to this day, is that it was one of the first racers. And to this day, it's one of the racers that doesn't specifically focus on one type of car. You got Assetto Corsa and all this other shit, right? And they say that that's the real simulator, but it only simulates GT cars, essentially. You know, they don't have Ford Focuses and stuff like that, which the physics model had to take into consideration. On top of that, it works great with a controller. On top of it, they do a lot with Gran Turismo. And for Gran Turismo, the amount of content that they had fucking for a racing game, 2 discs. Are we serious here? Like, let's not with the bullshit, because I feel like people undermine it. They always bring up Forza and stuff like that. But one thing about Polyphony Digital and its content, even today, which I don't really like the fact that I have to be online all the time, but I get it. I still don't like that shit, and I'm going to fight until they change that shit as much as I could. But the content is key, man. You're not going to find many games that will allow for that type of graphic fidelity, detailed physics, and just constant innovation in the racing sphere. I said I wasn't going to jump to PS5, but one thing I did see, I was online, right? And I was just watching, I was at the gym doing cardio. And I was just kind of like watching, I was watching YouTube videos, and I decided to type in Gran Turismo. And a guy did like one of the 24-hour tracks, which is a large track. It's massive, right? What ended up happening was the track was so large, but then since they have dynamic weather, part of the track was wet. Part of it, because that's where the cloud was at the time. And the guy had to make a split decision on whether he should go to a pit and refresh his tires and stuff like that. That's some shit. That's powerful. Anyway, going back to PlayStation 1, all the way back then when I was young, Silent Hill definitely deserves all the accolades when it comes to, because people want to call it a Resident Evil clone, and it's not a Resident Evil clone by any means, like at all. It's not a Resident Evil clone, and it's psychological, if anything. Like, it's a psychological horror game. And I really wish they expanded on like the combat and controls, but fast forward to this generation, they have Callisto Protocol, right? Callisto Protocol suffered from your character being way too able, and it stopped feeling like a horror game and more like an action game. So there has to be a medium that they can strike in between. Vagrant Story, I wanted to play that because it was like 3D, and they didn't use like the pre-rendered cutscenes and shit like that. And I always wanted to play it. One of these days, I am going to go back and play it. I wonder if I can get it on my Vita. I wonder. Legacy of King Soul Reaver, excuse me, was one of those games that, listen, big shit coming from there. It was one of the only PlayStation 1 games that really, after the initial load, did not have a load time at all. and it looked badass. The technology was through the roof with that game. Like, it was really crazy what they were able to accomplish on the PS1. Fog or no fog, because they have most PlayStation 1 games are foggy. And for Crash Bandicoot, I don't. If you don't know me, I don't like games that you can't control the camera. And to me, Crash, I think they started to grow into their own with Bandicoot Warped. Truthfully, I do think that they grew into their own, and they made their name, because normally it's a regular platformer. So they did a lot of cool things. They had like little puns. I think there was like a Tomb Raider level and stuff like that. So, and speaking of which, I mean, let me just go and say, and I will say, the reputation for Crash to me is higher than its reality, because I feel like it's not a bad game. It's a solid game that didn't really push anything forward. I'm looking for things that pushes things forward. Legacy of Kain, its storytelling was crazy as well, and it pushed the genre forward. It pushed the level design forward. So that's why I'm giving that. I'm saying that it's worth it, right? Tony Hawk Pro Skater. If you call yourself one of the black dudes that apparently you didn't want to, you didn't care too much about whatever people, I don't care about skateboarding and shit like that. That made it cool for everyone. That game right there, that was it. That was it. That was it was simple. You can easily get into it. It was difficult to really, really get into and master. I remember the 900 was something that everyone was trying to achieve. It was just a really fun game. How did you make a sports game feel arcade? Is beyond me. Kudos to you. Kudos to you. And just to take a little break here, I do want to let you know that I want to make this particular topic and show, because I like talking about games specifically, and I'll talk about some gaming politics and stuff like that sometimes. But this one, I feel like not a lot of people talk about the games explicitly, and on top of it, I feel like there's a lot of cap when it comes to a lot of these titles, which we'll start to see as the time goes on with the show, right? So moving on to N64, right? Their big games was Super Mario, Zelda, Ocarina of Time, Mario Kart, GoldenEye, Banjo, Kazooie, Wave Race, Perfect Dark, Smash Brothers, Star Fox, Diddy Kong Racing, and Paper Mario, and F-Zero, which PlayStation had Wipeout. There was a lot of those futuristic games back in the day, man, and some killer ass tracks. Some of these tracks were so killer. It was so nice. Oh, I miss it, yo. I'm a techno music freak, man. I swear, I'm a white boy in a black man's body. That's why I feel like I love techno music. But let's start off with Mario 64. Absolutely, its reputation and its in the reality, it's completely in line, if not lopsided, to the reputation. I feel like it doesn't get enough credit. The music was fucking top notch. The level design was top notch. It ran at a flawless 30 frames a second. The graphics were fucking crazy. It was just a very fun game to get into. It was revolutionary. Nobody did that back in the day at all. And like I said before, when I talk about these games, I am talking about games that push the genre forward. And as we go along, you'll see what I'm talking about more and more. Because a lot of the times, this format, normally I would be playing PlayStation and I would be talking, but I don't like my focus to be diverted. So I'm like sitting in the chair, I'm sitting in the hot seat, really digging into this. Absolutely, it deserves all the accolades. The Legends of Zelda: Ocarina of Time is another one of these games, right? Another one of these games where if you played action games, right? Or because it was like a weird mix of an RPG, but adventure. Is mostly adventure games, and they're pretty. I don't want to say rudimentary because I feel like that's taking it away. But the combat serves its purpose as to break up any kind of monotony. Absolutely, it deserves everything that it's gotten. Especially since I'm a music head, I fucking love good music, and like all of the music was a hit. In Zelda Ocarina of Time, absolute hit. I wish, like, the concept for Ocarina of Time was so far advanced. They had day and night cycles, and anybody that knows me knows I have a fetish for that. But the concept in general, towns and little things, and it being 3D, which I give Ocarina of Time more credit than a Final Fantasy game, because they really tried to map out the 3D environments and towns and people and stuff like that. There were many games that Square Soft, that's what they were called before they were Square Enix, did in the past that was much better than Final Fantasy VII. And that game always gets crazy accolades, and it annoys me. I'm not even gonna lie to you. That shit pisses me off dearly. It does. Especially we have Xenogears, you have Vagrant Story. I heard that was much better than any Final Fantasy that was out there. So absolutely, I'm going to call shit out as I see it. Right? Fine. I think that Ocarina of Time did a better job than a lot of RPGs back then in general. Right? Mario Kart was one of those games where you can. It was fun for everyone. It did 3D environments. It was just, you had a nice sense of speed. They really focused on frame rate and just kept everything simple but fun. One of a kind type game. Very nice. Now here's where shit starts to get dicey, because there's a lot of cap. There's a lot of cap for GoldenEye. As many people, and people are going to say this, right? Oh, well, people change over time. Yes, our demand for graphics is so good, blah, 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 blah. Bro, like, I'm going to be real with you. What did 007 do? Even with the expansion pack that allowed for better graphics, what did it do that furthered advanced? There's further advance, right? And then there's, you do it so sloppy that it, you know what I mean? Like, you can't go back and play. Like, a lot of these games that I've mentioned on this list, you can go back and play those games. Yeah, they look worse, but mechanically, they are sound, right? God, we got a lot of games to cover. Fuck. Anyway, yeah, mechanically, those games are sound. GoldenEye, you couldn't, like, basically you just looked at the enemy and you just pressed the trigger. And if you want to go, you know, even the mission structure was so rudimentary and basic. You know what I mean? So yeah, I would say that the animations, I think, right, and this is another thing that's going to blow people away with this comment. I truly think that Rare was a pretty standard developer. A lot of their games don't stand the test of time. A lot of them don't. A lot of them kind of push technology really, really far. But in terms of gameplay, I almost feel the same way with Naughty Dog. But Naughty Dog knows how to craft a really good game. I don't think that they do something that blows shit out the box. But at least they crafted it. To me, I feel like Rare was always an average developer. That most of their games are almost tech demos. And I would say the same thing with GoldenEye. People love GoldenEye because they could play with their friends, 4-player split screen, and that's what Nintendo commissioned them to do because they had 4 controller ports, right? But in actuality, the game barely functioned. We're talking about 7 frames a second. You could get a better frame rate by doing a flip book. Like, it was bad functionally. It sucked. And it gets a lot of cap for some reason. Just like Final Fantasy, there's a lot of cap with that. And it's crazy to me when I think about it, right? That's crazy. I don't think that I think the reputation is way higher and it doesn't deserve the accolades. I don't give a damn if it does 4-player split screen. It did it so damn terribly. Who gives a fuck? Really? If you ask me, who cares? Who cares? That's how I feel about it, right? I feel about that shit. That's how I feel. I feel like too much cap. The game. You play it again. Go boot up N64 if you have it and play the game. Shit, put it on the emulator and boot that bitch up. I guarantee you ain't gonna like it. That's what we talk about. I guarantee you won't like it. It sucks. It sucks. Not even no cap, no cap. It sucks. So it does. And I'm tired of people acting like it's that good. Your nostalgia got your ass. Same thing with Banjo Kazooie. Like everything that Banjo Kazooie did was already done with Mario or Zelda. It no, no. I don't. I think who made? Let me see here. Who made Wave Race? Let me take a look here. Hold on. So I feel like Wave Race was a solid game. Um, 64 developer. Let me take a look here. Hold on. Oh shit! Nintendo did that. Hmm. Hold on. Let me go. Let me wiki this shit real quick. That's like the easiest. No, Nintendo did Wave Race. Well then that's. I always thought that Wave Race was rare, but I mean that's I always was thinking, and I should have known better because it actually plays well. Wave Race also solidifies itself as a decent game. Man, you talking about graphics, man? That shit was ridiculous. Wave Race, yes, reputation definitely is accurate to what people remember. Even though I feel like actually it's a little bit lower than what people remember. I feel like people don't really mention that it was a fun ass game. It was really fun. Um, Perfect Dark, once again, it was a reskinned GoldenEye. Performed better. They had like a little bit more liberty of doing different things, especially with the expansion pack, and they don't have to license anymore, or have to worry about the license. Didn't like it. It was very generic. A lot of rare games were very generic, so I can definitely see when it's on the Xbox why people feel the way that they feel. So sue me, right? Smash Brothers Melee. There was no game like that was able to utilize all of your IPs, even the ones that were forgotten. I mean, Nintendo really capitalizes in general on nostalgia, but they've knocked that shit out the park. Absolutely, it's still big because it's just the concept. It's just that good. It's just that good. I have no problems with that shit at all. So I'm not going to talk about F Zero or Wave or what do you call it? Not Wave Race, Wipeout, or Paper Mario or anything like that. It's not really worth it, and we got to shorten this shit up. So let's go to the PS2 days, right? Um, I can't believe it took me about 25 minutes to talk about all the PS2 stuff. I mean PS1 and N64 shit. I really got to sharpen this. So I got to sharpen this up. So anyway, going back to PS2, right? Let's talk about the PS2, right? Legendary um console and its stuff, right? Just absolutely the bee's knees. It was delicious as a console. Final Fantasy 10 was, and I started getting into RPGs back when I played Parasite Eve and Xenogears. So I was like really stoked for that, right? And then when I saw what they were doing, they showed like these wonderful CGI trailers. It was just great. It was just awesome. You know what I mean? It was just great. And it turns out that it's still a 3D game that had a fixed camera, and I was not feeling it. Which, by the way, this new Final Fantasy, I ain't feeling that either. Sue me on that one too. Sue me on that. Not no, don't want it, don't need it, not feeling it. Mm-mm, mm-mm. Nope. I feel like I don't know too much about the story. Most of the Final Fantasy story is kind of relatively similar, right? I was gonna buy that one along with Final Fantasy 12. Final Fantasy 12 had a like 3D space, and Final Fantasy 13. We'll talk about that later. Wasn't feeling that shit either because ultimately You know, I don't know. Like, it's just something about the Final Fantasy games to me. It's always like this archaic design to me. Like when I think about Final Fantasy, I'm thinking about an open world type game that's like the Grand Theft Autos and shit like that, but in a Japanese style, or even Gravity Rush, if you know anything about that one, which that was an open world game, and it brought the art, the artistry of Japanese, you know, tapestries to life. Wasn't really a fan of the Final Fantasy because they always stick with these fixed camera angles or linear paths. Anyway, not Final, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, right? Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Personally, how can I put this, right? Um, I will say when it comes to Grand Theft Auto, it did see. This is where it gets dicey, right? Because it sounds like I'm going back on what I was saying, and I'm not. The stuff that they incorporated with Grand Theft Auto San Andreas pushed the genre forward. RPG elements, upgrading your car in an open world, living, breathing city, choices of how to talk to people and stuff like that. That was all great. It just wasn't either optimized or it was just too much for the PS2 to handle. It couldn't do it well. So I'm at a really awkward position on what to call it, whether its reputation precedes it or are people capping for the game or not. But then you look at the Grand Theft Autos nowadays, and that, like, if you had a better graphics and controls, it will just murder all of those games. They don't make good Grand Theft Auto games anymore. You know what I mean? They're so focused on cinematic experiences. There's many games on YouTube, right? Um, where they talk about what makes the old Grand Theft Autos great, which is it's freedom and how you can tackle the levels and stuff like that. You don't get that. You don't get that here. I mean, you don't get that in the new ones. You get it here though. Yeah, it's a little rough around the edges and stuff like that. And some things meander a lot, but still, it's still way ahead of its time. So no, I will say for sure that its reputation is in line with its sales and what everyone thinks. Resident Evil 5 is also a GameCube game. Not Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 4. And they manage, at least in the first half of the game, to just capture the very spooky element without it being psychological and weird shit, like weird malformed things and stuff like that. So it was just weird. And they moved along with that. They still kept the zombie stuff. I mean, there was some weird shit where there were more parasites than zombies, and I do like the spin on that one because they are allowed to do more things than just The Walking Dead. Essentially, it's over the shoulder view. You know, it's quick time events, strategically placed to keep it from, moving forward. I mean, it was great. It was absolutely great. Shadow of the Colossus. I wished and the technology fucked it up though, but the only thing that was bad about Shadow of the Colossus is draw distance and a lot of pop in, and it had, and I know I'm kind of speeding through this because we got a couple of generations to go through, and different consoles. Shadow of the Colossus is, if you're looking at the YouTube channel, which is Illicit Therapy, it is one of my favorite games of all time. It has its pop-up issues, you know what I mean? And it has its frame rate issues. It's not a fast-paced game, so the frame rate issues were mitigated, especially with its beautiful motion blur. But that game is still ahead of its time. To this day, what is it, 20 years later, it's still ahead of its time. No story, it's one of those games where you can't even add anything to it. Adding things, you can't think about what to add other than a better frame rate. Even its art style and graphics is very hard. When they redid Shadow of the Colossus, they didn't even need to do anything really with the Colossus. You know what I mean? Maybe a higher resolution for the textures, but like it was already crazy high resolution. They added like special for fur and shit like that. But they blew that out the park. That Shadow of the Colossus. It's absolutely insane what they ended up doing. I feel like a lot of people slept on the game. Like for the people who played it and experienced it, they know all about that shit. But for the people that don't know too much about it, maybe heard its name in passing, yo, what's going on in 2099? They don't know. They don't know. They do not know. And I love it. 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 You know, one of my favorite games of all time. I wish more people played it. They probably would have did better if they did like the Last Guardian, which is unfortunately one of the casualties. Um Burnout Burnout Takedown, right? Was an arcade game for people that just didn't have any patience for Gran Turismo and learning that. Uh, no shade to any of them. That anybody that played it, no shade to them. Um, no shade. It was one of the best games I've ever played. Blistering frame rates, tons of particle systems, beautiful graphics, beautiful physics. It was just insane. It was the perfect arcade game to me, right up there with Crazy Taxi and the like. Its reputation for what it gotten, it deserved it in spades for sure. It deserved it absolutely. The Ratchet, I'm gonna combine these. The Ratchet and Clank and the Jack and Daxter series, to me, I will say to this day that Insomniac tends to play it safe. They tend to play it safe. That's okay, right? That is okay. Um, I feel like their best works was definitely Spyro. It was very easy to make a platformer, right? But what they did with Spyro is what Crash couldn't do. They made a fully functioning 3D environment that had crazy draw distance and had more of a complex game to me personally than a Crash game. Linear games like what Bruce said, the co-creator of The Last of Us and Uncharted, mentioned this. It's easy to make linear games. You know what I mean? That's just what it is. And to make an open world like game like Spyro was that. But that was their claim to fame. Going back to Ratchet and Clank and Jack and Dexter, I don't think that they were innovative at all. Really, they focused on guns, which was pretty big because of the shooters. The Medal of Honors and the Halos at the time. So to me, no. Which we'll get into Halo in a moment. Going to Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Now, here's the funny thing about Grand Theft Auto Vice City. I'm going to keep it a buck with you. I'm going to keep it a buck. I'm going to keep it a bizuck and let you know. I'm going to let you know that although, I'm just going to be honest with you, Vice City definitely opened my eyes to my future move 20 years later to go to Florida to live there as a resident. And they captured the look of Florida pretty decently. But as a game, no. The landscape was flat as hell, and I get that's how Florida was. They didn't even try to spice it up. There were mad glitches in that game. I can't give it. I can't. They had motorcycles, fine, and it was perfect for the straightaways, but they didn't have that many cars on the road on the PS2 because they couldn't handle all of that shit. You know what I mean? And they needed a crazy draw distance because it's Florida. You know what I mean? It's flat and it's a beautiful state and it's a tropical environment. So they couldn't render cars on the road. The saving grace, I feel like what makes that game extra cap is the soundtrack. The soundtrack and Scarface, type of it was the Scarface effect, but the soundtrack for sure. It was absolutely surreal to play a video game that had one of the biggest songs of all time play as soon as you jumped into the car. I'll never, ever, ever, ever forget it. And when I moved to Florida, I'm going to post on Twitter in my car, the same Billie Jean. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you this straight up, though. But gameplay wise, wasn't feeling it. The helicopters, you can only go but so high. You can only go but so high, which was like, kind of sucked the fun out of that in general. I'm gonna be honest. Wasn't feeling it. Wasn't feeling it. Wasn't feeling it. And that's okay. Sometimes it is what it is, right? Um, with that being said, right? Let's take a look here. What else do we got? Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3. And I was a person, right, that did not like Metal Gear Solid 2. I don't like fixed cameras. I don't care if you can make the camera move or whatever. I was not a fixed camera person. Ever, ever, never, ever, ever, never. Hated it. Hated it, hated it, hated it, hated it. And it took me years actually kind of to see the genius that was Metal Gear Solid 2. And most of it was basically story. You know what I mean? Because the gameplay was very similar to the first one, but they kicked that shit completely up a notch with Metal Gear Solid 3. Absolutely ridiculous. Metal Gear Solid 3 had the adventure element that I was looking for. It had new gameplay elements. If you bought Subsistence, you could move along in the 3D environment. Mint. Silent Hill 2 also took storytelling. A lot of Konami games took that to a whole new level. And to be honest with you, yeah, that was crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So, to be honest, that's how I feel about that. Now we're going to move on to Xbox, because Xbox also played a role. And actually, no, we are going to go to GameCube. I already mentioned how I feel about, Resident Evil 4. I already mentioned that. Mario Sunshine, which was the successor to Mario 64, was not hitting it. Just letting you know. A lot of people kind of have nostalgic feelings for it. Graphics were beautiful. Gameplay. Really what killed that game was its level design. That's what killed it. That's what killed the game was the level design. That was the thing that kind of destroyed that game, which was unfortunate. That was unfortunate. It was unfortunate that the level design killed the game, because it was a very pretty game. It was gorgeous. A gorgeous, gorgeous game. And that's fine. But it doesn't live up to its reputation. Super Smash Brothers Melee definitely did. They took the original concepts, brought that bitch to 60 frames a second, and expanded on everything that they did right. It was a much bigger game. It was a lot of different gameplay modes. Very Namco-esque, right? Just absolutely mint. Absolutely mint. Worth every penny. Metroid Prime, which I think they let me see what he say. Yeah, I went back and played Sunshine last year. My nostalgic blinded me. It was me. It was though. It was. When you go back and look at, it just wasn't hitting. It wasn't hitting the way that it should have, which unfortunately is a shame, man. It's a beautiful game though. You can't take that away from it at all. It is gorgeous. Gorgeous. But I'm gonna tell you right now, nope. It wasn't hitting. It wasn't hitting. Nope. Let me see. A display, disable, show platform icons. Yes. So, okay, cool. And then the clean, hold on for a minute. I'm gonna say box. That's life. I'm I'm gonna say old school. Let me see. I'm sorry, I'm fixing something. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No, I think I like. See, I gotta be high delay. I'll do 10 seconds and close that. And then what I'll do is I'll shrink that and I'll put it right in the front. Hey, I'll lock that here. Hey, can you do me a favor here and you just type one more message? I'm testing something out. I want to see what that look like. Probably gonna look like poop. So yeah, going back to that one, we'll see how that looks. I'm still trying to get it, try to get it together. Metroid Prime just recently released, right? It's a remake, unfortunately, and because I feel like they need to make another. Let's see how that looks. I see, yo. Does it pop up on my screen? It doesn't pop up. It's probably going to. And actually, I need to put that as clean. You know what? I'm going to unlock that and expand that. And put it here and see what it looks like. Let's see what it's hitting for. All right, fine. It didn't do it. So, to me, Metroid Prime, no. Metroid Prime, absolutely not. It was, to me, Metroid Prime was another game where its reputation got the best of it. It just was. If you played the other Metroids, I'm gonna be honest with you, you ain't gonna feel that shit. It's not that great. It isn't. It isn't. A lot of people capped for that game, and a lot of people didn't fuck with it until later on in life. That's the funny thing. So that's a pass for me. Oh, that's why it's not showing up. You know why? Because I think no, it should. Let me see here. I'll put it there. We'll see how that's hitting. Yeah. So the fact that people were hyping that shit up, no. Wind Waker, right, was a whole disappointment. Wind Waker, a whole disappointment. To me, it was an okay game, but it looked like that generation after Nintendo went their hardest, and on the N64, they couldn't go any harder. They were at full capacity when it came to the N64. As soon as they did GameCube, I don't know, like they were defeated by Sony to the point where the only game that came out swinging was early games. The other games, they kind of went straight family friendly, and they didn't want to make any kind of mature games. And what I mean by that is not the kids element to it, right? For GameCube games, it's the very fact that they didn't want the games to be challenging at all, and they just forsake the whole thing. So Wind Waker wasn't a challenging game. It was a cute game, cute looking game, adorable. The technology behind the game was pretty decent, fine, whatever. You caught that, whatever. But in terms of a Zelda game, nah, it was all right. It was a very basic game. And that kind of leads me to the Xbox. Now, I feel like I have to kind of list what came out for the Xbox, because I feel like a lot of people don't know what ended up coming out for the Xbox, and then we'll talk about the Xbox and what it offered, right? And there's a lot of other games I've released too. Don't get it twisted, but the main games, you know what I mean? The overrated games, possibly, right? Halo Combat Evolved, Halo 2, Fable, Jade's Empire. I didn't know. I haven't played it. We're not going to talk about Burnout anymore or San Andreas. Chronicles of Riddick. I did hear about that one, Project Gotham, and those are the games that was basically the goats for the Xbox, original Xbox. Let's start off with Halo, which Halo basically rekindled console shooters. That's what they ended up doing for that type of game. They rekindled console shooters, fine, right? What I hate Bungie for doing, because I remember back in the day, during that time frame, you did not have aim assist for any of these console first person shooters. You had to aim on your own. You had to adjust your sensitivity. You know, if you needed to invert any of the axes, then you would have to do that yourself. But it required you to know what the hell you were doing. And Bungie had the idea. This is why I would never forgive them for this. Bungie had the idea, right, to say this. This is what pisses me off. They were like, oh, it's very hard to aim on the console. So what we're going to do is to give you a little nudge. Aim assist, sticky aim. That was a big thing back in the day. When I played Red Faction and Red Faction 2, they didn't have any of these things at all. None of these things existed. You had to aim on your own. So if you became good at that game, that was all you. But what ended up happening is that people thought that they were way better than what they thought they were better than what they were. And now I will say that sticky aim is much better than lock on, which is what Call of Duty took that idea and expanded upon. So when people played a game that had little aim assist or lock on aim, they were like, this game is trash. And they didn't know why it was trash. They said that they felt like they were out of control and they couldn't aim, which one of my favorite first-person shooters is Killzone. It fucked with that so badly because they had very little aim assist. Very little. Very little. And that pissed me off, right? On top of that, they did have an arena-style type shooter, type game. They had that arena-style situation, which I was cool with. But the thing is, I played Halo. I played Quake. I played both of those fucking games, you know, Quake and Unreal. So arena shooters to me wasn't a new concept. So I never understood why everybody was breaking their necks for this particular concept. It didn't make any sense to me as to why people were treating this like the best thing since sliced bread. And one of my boys ended up telling me what ended up going on with that is, well, the story. The story was what made people, I'm about to tear me up some fucking watermelon. Just like you know I would. But the thing that people ended up saying is that the storyline for Halo, this goes for, you know, Halo 2 as well. They said that shit was hot fire flames. That's what they said, right? So I'm sitting here like, damn. And I start looking into the whole Halo. I start looking into that. I start really looking into that and found out that the story and its books for which it derived from, I don't know what came first, but the books were definitely had more to say and had more character development in the game itself. So it was like, if you played Metal Gear Solid, if you played any of the Japanese games, the story didn't really wow you like that. You know what I'm saying? So to me, it leads me to believe that people like the game only due to the fact that it was a party game, essentially. It had a relatively decent story to follow along with. And I can't get down with that. I think that's cap. Mm-mm. That's kibbity cap. Nope. I feel like Halo's reputation is way higher than what it should be. Absolutely. So I'm going to feel some kind of way about that. Hold on for a minute. Am I playing? Hold on. I don't want nothing else to be playing in the background. Oh yeah, everything's muted. Okay, cool. So all right, we're good. We're kibbles right now. So no, I think that's cap. I think that's absolute cap. When I'm looking at Halo, I don't think that that game deserves its reputation at all. Oh no, nope. Um, Fable had interesting ideas, and to me, they could have really cultivated a really nice game. I feel like the reputation for Fable is higher than what it should be as well. Unfortunately, they can never explore how big the game could have gotten, and that sucks because of Microsoft and how they don't want to fund things. Um, and then we got Project Gotham Racing, which spawned Drive Club, which is one of my favorite games. I haven't played that, but I heard good things about it. And that is the PlayStation 2, what do you call it? GameCube and Xbox generation. And we're going to talk about uh, PS3 generation. And what I want to do is kind of mention how much cap a lot of these games are. And people ain't going to like that shit. Remember, if it doesn't push the genre forward, I ain't with it. I ain't with that shit. You can point blank, period, right? The Last of Us, which is one of the biggest games, absolutely. I feel like the multiplayer was really nice. Gears of War, I forgot to mention. Well, I didn't forget to mention because that came out next generation. But anyway, going back to The Last of Us, absolutely killed that. Killed it. Great storyline, great acting. It's the acting that really did it, not necessarily the story. The acting is what put it. You know, people really, really they did their best with that one for sure. Uncharted also set pieces is what Uncharted put out there, and set pieces is always good. And set pieces was basically the new QTEs. It was back in the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube era. Like everybody was doing QTEs for sure. Everybody was doing QTEs. So, just saying, it is what it is. Um, and that was that. So I feel like because of that, they definitely did what they needed to do. That it deserves its reputation. God of War 3 allow for Santa Monica Studios to break free from their Devil May Cry roots for the game that they were trying to do, and they came into their own. They made like this crazy big ass storyline, which it had like a decent storyline, but it wasn't. It was took a backseat. This time, it really it started to feel like a show, so to speak, and just the graphic stuff that they had, the morphological anti-aliasing. It was like no jaggies whatsoever. The overly violent, the really complex model. I mean, that game's tops. It deserves all of its accolades. Um, Red Dead Redemption is Grand Theft Auto in the 1800s. So, I mean, to me, it's been done before, if you ask me. Little Big Planet, to me, it wasn't done in a easy manner. I mean, I get it. Even with Dreams, like it's a complex design. I mean, a complex concept where you have to make your own levels, but it shouldn't be that difficult to me. I mean, you get a lot of controls and stuff like that. They should have made that shit easy across the board for you to kind of like make your level. You know, create the play space that's either a rectangle or whatever, and then you can start putting things in there. That would have been nice, but they decided to give you granularity with that shit. So there's that. um, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. As much as I hate it, now I hate it not because of any old reason. I don't like it because I feel like there was a crazy detriment to when that game was released. But that's not. I mean, people bought it for a reason. It was a damn good game. But I feel like people didn't try to innovate, and they were fighting this to this day. They're still fighting this shit. But reputation wise, yeah. I remember seeing the graphics. I was like, what the fuck? because they focus on like a realistic type game. So yeah, to me, absolutely, I give it that. Um, and I believe the Souls games. I won't say Dark Souls or Demon Souls. Uh, I feel like after Demon Souls, that shit was overrated. But I get why they had to move it over to Dark Souls from Demon Souls because Sony owned the IP. And in order for other people to play it, they had to call it something else, reskin it essentially. So that was that. They haven't changed the formula much, and that's what I don't like about it. I mean, Bloodborne definitely changed the formula for the better, and that's how that was. But you know, people are fans of the game. I get it. But if you were if you're an older gamer that played a lot of different types of games, that shouldn't have. Nah, nah. Either way, moving on to the next, right? On I think the 360. Let's take a look here. Mm-mm-mm. This shit tastes great. Watermelon or fruit salad, basically. Oh, there we go. BioShock was known to be an Xbox game. Supposedly, BioShock was really, really good. When I played the demo, I wasn't that impressed with it, to be perfectly honest with you. Um, they have Halo Reach. They have Elder Scrolls Skyrim. Skyrim is over fucking rated. Too many glitches. Didn't really bring anything that crazy to the table. Absolutely not. No, no, no. I'm not a fan. Not a fan. Not a fan. I already mentioned how I feel about Halo 3. I mentioned that shit. More so the same, but a larger scale. I never thought the acting was that great in that game. And I feel like the level design took a backseat. It was cool to have co-op games and stuff like that, but that's about where it ended for me. Um, Mass Effect. I wish I was there to play that shit, but the exclusivity, which we were talking about before, how the people say that Sony's the anti-consumer, but this has been going on for a while. Gears of War was locked on that system. Skyrim was technologically locked. BioShock was locked on that system. The DLC for Grand Theft Auto 4 was locked on that system. It was just crazy shit. Crazy time. Reach again tried to do some crazy stuff, and to me, I would think it was like a little bit overly ambitious, and people were already getting tired of Halo, and they were really on that Call of Duty bandwagon. So that's how I feel like all of those were basically not deserving of their position. Even Gears of War, I think Gears of War claimed to fame was its graphics and co-op, but there were already a shit ton of co-op games back then. And to be honest with you, I feel like that concludes what that generation was about. We're not going to talk about PS5 or PS5, Xbox Series, or the Switch because I could talk about the Switch. I'll say that. But these new consoles, the new generation, we can't talk about. It's not done yet. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but it will give insight as to what the new consoles are going to bring to the table, especially when Sony's in. So Sony has become a first party house, you know what I mean? So I feel like deep down, honestly, I wasn't feeling any of that shit, to be honest with you. Not at all. That rhetoric, I should say. So let's start from the top. Uncharted 4. That's when this company started to become pretty political and you know, social justice warrior like, and try to make Uncharted too much of a realistic series. Wasn't feeling that shit at all, and I feel like the gameplay was refined, but it didn't shake anything up in terms of what, you know, these new consoles could do that were easier to develop for. Spider-Man, believe it or not, Spider-Man to me personally, just I get people like it, the storyline is great and everything like that, but in terms of like gameplay, It's it's the Arkham series essentially, but with a Spider-Man twist and good swinging. But we already had good swinging in a lot of the fucking Spider-Man games back in the day. So to me, when I look at this game, especially me being a Spider-Man fan, I feel like it's safe. There's so many things that they could have done and they didn't do. So I can't give you that. Horizon Zero Dawn. They basically took a Monster Hunter game and made that into an RPG, essentially. You know, which Monster Hunter is sort of like an RPG anyway. But it's hard to talk about a game that I'm a fan of and then critique it as well, like for any other person, right? But I will say this. There's a lot of expansion that they could do with the series, even to this day. Storyline, gameplay wise, a lot of things that they could do. I feel like there's a lot of things that they should do, and maybe we'll see a little bit of that. Truthfully, maybe we'll get to see that shit. Um, is it deserving of a reputation? It doesn't have that much of a reputation. That's the thing. But yes, absolutely. My reasoning is because, right? It's my reasoning. Where the fuck are you going to get robot dinosaurs with range combat? It just is nowhere. There's nowhere. I hate to say it like that, but it's nothing like that. Even to this day now, it's nothing like that. And that's what makes it hard for the game to function because there isn't, I mean, it makes it hard to place, I should say. There's nothing like that. There's nothing. Bloodborne, is it worth the hype? Absolutely. To me, my personal opinion, it's the best Souls game that they made. Bar none. Storyline, top notch, right? And still keeps that obscure nature of it, right? Top notch for the storyline. Top notch for its graphics and that engine, whatever shitty ass engine that they're using. Absolutely across all fronts, right? Cool. It definitely is worth its reputation. And it's amazing how all these people, bandwagoners, right, don't give this game enough cred because Elden Ring was basically hyped to the heavens. We digress. Red Dead Redemption 2. Absolutely not. People can sit there and talk about realistic graphics, but the game doesn't really push anything forward. And it's sloppy the way it does in terms of controls. If I wanted to watch a movie, this is the direction that Rockstar went to, which I don't favor. But if I wanted to watch a movie, I would watch a movie. And that's my problem with it. No. Game is not deserving. Nope. Nope. God of War is a funny thing, right? Because at the time, here's the problem with God of War. There's some gameplay naggles, whatever you want to call it, right? That I have a problem with. The problem with this shit, right, is, let me see here. Hold on. The storyline and how they deliver the storyline is one of the best I've ever seen since The Last of Us, right? Emotion, all that good stuff. But the gameplay, I don't really care about that many weapons. You need more combos. And as I'm playing a new game, it's like weird because it's like there's a lot of automatic combos. I don't want to, that's all I can really say. They're like supers, right? But a lot of times there's short combos, and I can understand why people say what they say. You really don't have that much control over your character. I mean, yeah, you can cancel some things, but it's still the same swipes and stuff like that. And they have a lot of weapons, especially in Ragnarok as well. It's kind of weird to talk about this in Ragnarok because it's really next generation too. It's cross-platform. But I know it's going to piss people off for saying such, and it is what it is. I feel like he needs to have more control and stuff like that. There's too many combos that are almost feel like it's automatic combos. And too many timing combos. Like it really should play like a fighting game. It really should. Instead of them trying to make it like a Souls game, it should play more like a fighting game to me. A lot of their stuff things are too long, in my opinion, right? So there's that. Does it? Is it worth it? Is it worth its salt? Yes, absolutely. You know, absolutely for sure. 7:30, 8:30. Okay, I think an hour and a half was good. I was just looking at the time frame we were doing. It's worth its salt for sure. For sure. For sure. For sure. For sure. The Witcher, over freaking rated. That's an overrated game. Absolutely not. Overrated, 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 overrated. I am nope. I just beat it a few days ago, right? And I was like, even though the storyline is great, it's like, are people just playing it for the storyline, or are they actually playing the game? That shit is overly rated. Overly rated. The controls are sloppy, animation's sloppy, the engine's sloppy, all of that shit's sloppy, and it feels like a double A game. I saw many errors and mistakes that could happen within the game, but its lore, meaning level design and stuff like that, is really great. But nope, nope, nope. That shit, nope. Overrated. Overrated. Now, Grand Theft Auto 5, there's so much ambition with the game. I would say it's deserving, but they need to fix some stuff up. Like, it's the controls are too bad. Too much input latency, not enough control over the character. Get rid of that rage engine for sure. I don't know if it helps them with the graphics because it's their own proprietary engine or whatever, but that shit needs to go. That's an absolute no-go. I can't deal with it. Ghost of Tsushima, excuse me. Yes, that game is worth all of its stuff. The combat system is absolutely amazing. Graphics are absolutely amazing. The storyline is engaging as hell. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. Across the board. And we are going to just have to continue this PS5 one of these days when we get enough, games. But all in all, just a final thought with everything. So what I would like to do, I gotta listen to how different shows are conducted on YouTube, so this could be a little cleaner. It is very hard for me to talk for a very long time to myself. So I appreciate every one of you guys bearing with me with this one for sure. I appreciate all of it. All of it, all of it, all of it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And the nature of the show essentially is just kind of just be a gamer and talk about just things that are kind of cap and what's not, and just to give you an insight of who I am and what I think, you know what I mean? So this wouldn't be such a mystery, right? In general, this show was supposed to highlight is the reputation of these games accurate to reality or not, essentially. And I feel like for the most part they are. I'm not gonna lie to you. There's some games, especially in the later generations, where it started to feel like people just hype things, and the hype is what gets you that nostalgia bomb thing where you think things are better than what it is. You know what I'm saying? Which is unfortunate. And likewise, I feel like there's going to be a lot of games, especially this generation, especially on the Sony's end, where people are going to play that years later and be like, "Oh, this game was good. I don't know how anybody even say it was mid." And I swear to God, if I hear that shit, I'm flash kicking everybody. Absolutely. And then also, there's that extra layer of certain where games come from, where people feel this kind of way, where it's just automatically a good thing. Like Rockstar, for instance. If it comes out of Rockstar house, supposedly it's always good. And that's not true. If it's Nintendo, it's always good. That's not true. And now we got this rhetoric. If it's from software, it's always good. Not true either. Sony as well. If it comes out from Sony, it's a little less so impactful. But people are on that bullshit too. Not true either. So, I would say start listening to the hype of games, start playing these games, or else we won't be having decent games to play. Period, point blank. But I hope you enjoyed the show. If you liked it, definitely hit that subscribe button. I really would appreciate it. Grow this tiny ass channel into something meaningful. And I wanted to do this organically. There was other people that kind of involved themselves with this channel, and it just my old channel rather, and it didn't work. You know, uh, people were trying to visit me when they needed their fix because their favorite YouTube channel, content creator wasn't there, and I don't play them games. You like me for me, and that's it. And I'm not going to spit some rhetoric out there that you know that you just want to hear. I'll give you the truth of the matter, or what I perceive as the truth, and not hide mine. But let me know. Thank you guys. I really appreciate this. I'm glad that this worked out the way that I thought it was going to work out. I love this. I can finally sit down and really focus on everything. That's what I was looking for. But the video is going to be archived, and that should be up later. Listen, I hope you guys take a listen to it and like it and everything. And I'm out.